Hi and welcome to Chatty AF, the Anime Feminist podcast. My name's Amelia, I'm the editor-in-chief of Anime Feminist, and I'm joined today by Dee, Peter and Vrai. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
Hi, yeah, I'm Dee Hogan. I'm a writer and editor for AniFem, as well as the contributor liaison and organizational wizard. I also run the Josei Next Door, a friendly neighborhood anime blog, and you can hang out with me on both Twitter and Tumblr at Josei Next Door.
I'm Peter Phobian. I'm Associates Features Editor for Crunchyroll and a contributor and editor at Anime Feminist.
I'm Vrai Kaiser. I'm a contributor and editor at Anime Feminist, and you can find all the places what I do things by throwing Vrai Kaiser into the Googles, Kaiser. You know, I love talking to the people, so come see me.
Okay, and today is the second podcast recording for our 6-month anniversary for Anime Feminist. I probably could have said that better. Anime Feminist has been around for 6 months. Hooray!
Yay!
But
Huzzah!
We've recorded one podcast where we talk about Anime Feminist and our experiences working with it and building up the community around it and our plans for the future. But we also had a lot of questions when we put this out to Twitter, asking us about anime and our opinions about anime, which is shocking. So we're going to go through those today. So just before we start, just quickly, I just want to ask each of you what your usual anime viewing habits were before joining AniFem, because I think, Vrai, you didn't really watch very much, did you?
Well, no, usually what, I kind of go in cycles. I think most fans who are into anime for long enough do, but before I got involved with the site, it was very much, I'd pick up an older show that I had meant to watch back in the 90s or early 2000s, and hadn't gotten to, and then maybe if I heard 1 or 2 shows a season that were particularly interesting to me, then I would pick that up. Like, I watched Yurikuma Arashi, and then nothing, and then I watched Yuri on Ice.
Right, so actually taking part in AniFem, you've started watching more kind of currently airing stuff? Yeah,
just in terms of partly to write content for the site, and then partly just because it's fun to have it's nice to have a community of people that I like that are talking about it, and I want to be able to take part in those conversations. So it's just behooves me.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, I think, Peter, you were watching pretty much everything airing before because of your work with Crunchyroll. So has that changed at all since joining AniFem?
I don't think so. Yeah, I do weekly features on Crunchyroll, so I watch just about everything, at least to a certain point, and I tend to keep up with quite a few series per season. So I felt like I had a pretty good base to start writing for Anime Feminist.
And Dee, how about you? Have your viewing habits changed at all with anime?
No. Well, they changed when I started my own blog.
Yeah.
3 years ago. Which was when I made the awesome decision to watch every premiere and then go from there. And so I've done my best to kind of keep up with that with AniFem, because kind of like Bryce said, it is continuing to be a good thing for me to keep up with lots of the new shows. One thing I will say is I have gone back and revisited older stuff more than I was beforehand. I've kind of, where I used to maybe watch 10 shows a season, even though I maybe wasn't that into the bottom 3, now I'll trim some of those bottom shows off and watch and rewatch. Right now I'm going through the story of Sankoku, the delightful shoujo that time forgot, and part of that is to kind of refresh myself on some older material that maybe I can get a good article out of, or just to have that kind of fresh in my memory. So I have gone back to the older stuff a little bit more since we started with AniFem, but I was already watching a bunch of the new stuff, so that's continued.
I think it's been the other way around for me. I was watching all the new airing stuff when I started my personal blog. That was last January, and so I've watched every new premiere since the winter 2016 season. And I've stopped watching older stuff, so I've stopped going back catalogue because I just don't have time anymore. So I'm really hoping as AniFem grows and I have less of the day-to-day running on my own shoulders, I can actually start watching more back catalogue. But at the moment, it's very much currently airing anime and very little else. I also just want to just cover this before we get into the anime questions. What kind of shows are you drawn to? Like, what draws you to an anime? So, Right, I know we were talking earlier about how you're drawn to the trash of the world.
I love basically. Well, my favorite anime is Gankutsuo. So, is it gay? Is it surreal? It's probably for me.
We'll discuss Flip Flappers later.
Which I haven't watched and keep meaning to. It's on the schedule, I swear. But otherwise, I do like series that I hate series that feel really calculated and kind of slimy in that way. But if a series is just a dumb concept done wholeheartedly, I'll probably watch it. I love that kind of sincere doofiness.
And Peter, how about you?
That's a really hard question, actually.
I know. I'm sorry, I've sprung this on you.
There's like a lot of like elements that I like. So if stuff has one or more of these elements, then typically I can really get into it. And it's stuff like shonen, where it has like really strong like emotional narratives, especially like single character focus, I think are really interesting. Strong use of visual metaphor, specifically when it comes to anime and not manga. I love like art house series as well, just to see like what animators can do and how they can portray a lot of that stuff visually. And anything that has like cognitive spaces in it, like Flip Flappers, Paprika, a little bit of Showa Roku Rakugo Shinju, where it does a lot of stuff like allegorically in these like unreal environments. I think it's just because I was a psych major. I find that stuff really cool, and like cyberpunk as a genre.
And Dee, how about you?
I like a lot of things. I have a wide umbrella. I don't know. I got into shoujo like a lot when I was growing up, and so that has always kind of been near and dear to my heart. Although I tend to come down a little bit harsher on it, I think, because the good stuff is just like the best out there, and then the bad stuff has all the things I really hate. So it's a you know, I hold it. I think I hold it to kind of a high standard because I do like it, and it's kind of been a part of my life for so long. I am fantasy trash. So if you have like a story with like a fantastical setting or elements, as long as there's nothing like egregiously, awful about it, I'll probably stick around.
Have you watched ReZero yet?
I have not. I caught the first episode because I watch all the premieres. And what I heard from other people about it made me think it was not a show I would personally like.
That's a very diplomatic answer.
That's very diplomatic and accurate, I'm sure. It's entirely fair.
Yeah, I don't know. I tend to gravitate, again, I tend to like good shoujos. I tend to gravitate towards historical fictions. I love the kind of surreal art house type stuff like Peter and Vrai were talking about, just because they do tend to give you a lot to think about, which is fun. So even if I'm not like really emotionally dedicated to it, there's still something there that I can kind of latch onto. And then just to kind of see how different people present the world. I think I tend to gravitate towards stories that are a little bit outside of my own experience. So I'm like, for a long time, I really had no interest in like anime that took place in high school. But now that I'm far enough removed from high school, there's some interest in that and kind of like, the adolescent experience, I guess.
I think I'm, again, kind of opposite.
Well, and it really depends. I'm much more likely to watch a show with high schoolers if it's a comedy. Like, if they're goofing around. Like, Tanaka-kun is always listless. Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun. Those are great.
Yes.
Because they're so silly and they capture that sense of absurdity, of absurd importance, I think is how I described it in like this essay I wrote about Cute High Arts Defense Club Love. That is part of like the high school experience. So yeah, I like comedies too quite a bit. Again, as long as they don't do anything, as long as they're kind of warm-hearted, I guess.
As long as they're not Love Tyrant, is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, I don't know. I have a wide umbrella. I like a lot of different stuff. It's just kind of like certain elements have to come together to catch my eye, I guess.
Yeah. And I think I'm, I guess, a little bit different to all of you because I really don't like surreal stuff very much. So I've watched Utena. I don't like it that much. I appreciate and respect what it does as a story, and I appreciate its place in fandom history, and I think it's the right place. But I don't think I could watch it again. I watched it once as a group, and that was wonderful because it was as a group. Watching it on my own, all 50 whatever episodes, would be just too much for me.
39.
And a movie.
It felt like 50.
Oh, no.
I tend to be more drawn to the stories that are very tightly about character development. I love seeing underdogs overcome their internal obstacles. Shonen is kind of made for me a lot of the time. I like those kind of quite straightforward stories. Like anything can be happening around these people, but are they growing as people? Or if they're not growing, is it an exploration of kind of the human experience, such as it is? So I guess on one end of the spectrum, you've got something like Scum's Wish, which is all about nuance and complexity and humanity and flaws and problems. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got something like Naruto. And they've both touched me in very, very different ways. But those are the kinds of things that I tend to be drawn to. So that context then...
Can we also agree that did Sayo Yamamoto make it is a quality of immediate approval?
Ooh. This is gonna get good later.
Oh, right, yes. I have to fight you in the street, I forgot.
Okay, if that's what's gotta happen, that's what's gotta happen.
I've only seen Yuri on Ice, so I can't comment on that.
I tend to feel that way about Ikuhara as well. I'm like, oh, Ikuhara made it? Alright, let's stick this out.
It's true. It might end in a train wreck,
the moment you said Ikuhara, I just winced. So.
Let's fight on Tokyo Tower like an X. 1999.
oh, the clamp phase that I had.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Had. Past tense.
If they'd settle down and tell a concrete story again, I could probably sit down because I would know it would end.
Well, Cardcaptor's coming back, so you're good.
Oh, I'm there for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, heck yeah.
Everybody is.
On which common ground we can move on to our questions.
Yes.
Sure.
So we had some great questions from people on Twitter that have really made us think. Certainly there's absolutely there were questions that I wasn't expecting, and I'm really interested to hear what you all have to say. So the first one, nice simple one to start with, from @senpai_notes on Twitter. What is your favourite show that's aired since you started up? Who wants to step in with that?
I would probably have to say, since AniFem started up, that was like mid-summer, right? Or late summer into fall?
It would be the autumn season, the fall season.
Okay. Then I'd probably have to go with Flip Flappers because it had most of the things that I described in the previous question. Really strong character narrative, the main character. I love that Evangelion actualization type story. That's like my kryptonite. I have to watch it if it's got that, and it does it really well. It has the visual metaphors and the cognitive spaces. It does really well. And Pablo, all they do is backgrounds and environments. So they did some super crazy stuff. The animation was off the chart and really well directed. And I just thought it was super charming. Had a few problematic elements, but I don't know. I just was looking forward to it so much every single week.
It's Yuri on Ice. Of course it's Yuri on Ice. I'm a huge fan of every series that Sayo Yamamoto has directed, and she only does that once every 4 years or so thus far, so it's like an event for me every time she comes out with a new series. And beyond that, it's just, it's a really strong character narrative, which I tend to prefer over plot-driven stuff. It looks beautiful, it's very gay, and just on a personal note, it was kind of a series that became kind of a date night thing with my partner, so it was a very special, just time and place thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, Yuri on Ice is my answer. I rewatched it so much as it was airing. Every week I thought of new blog posts I could write about it. I haven't written about them, but I thought of things I could write about every single week. And also, again, on a personal note, it's one that I've actually been able to share with a very old friend of mine. We've known each other, 22 years, and she's never watched anime with me. And I was able to show her this anime, and she loved it. And she keeps sending me Yuri on Ice fan art that she comes across on Pinterest. It's just really nice to have that relationship with someone that I've known for so long and has never shared this hobby with me. Yeah, Yuri on Ice, absolutely. D?
Is it... Okay, so I would say that Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju probably doesn't count because season 1 started before AniFem kicked up. Is that fair?
No, go for it.
No, you can count it.
You can
because I can name a different show if you guys want me to.
You can name 2 shows if you want. We're not going to be that rigid with the rules.
Rakugo Shinju, it was Season 2 I might have even liked better than Season 1 because I was very attached to more attached to the characters, I think, because the Season 1 I was still trying to figure out what the show was doing.
Yeah.
And then with Season 2 I had a better idea, so I was just like latched onto these sad, wonderful, complicated, flawed people. And so it was like, not only was it really interesting on kind of an intellectual and analytical level, but it just punched me in the feels every week. So Rakugo Shinju would be the one I would name if it counts.
If it doesn't count,
it does.
For AniFem.
It does count. But if it didn't count,
then it would be Classicaloid.
Ah.
As far as favorite show that has aired since AniFem started, I looked forward because
it's ended.
Season 1 is over. Season 2 will happen, so I'm doing okay.
Oh, has it been confirmed?
It was just every Saturday morning I would wake up just so excited to be able to watch this zany, again, this kind of warm-hearted comedy that was very silly and just completely went all in on its weirdness and had a great time, and it was a blast. So yeah, favorites would be those two, which are about as different as you can get, I think.
I think so.
I don't know how you watched Rakugo week to week. Like, I binged it, and that was painful enough.
It was painful.
Oh, it's such a good show, but just the tension of I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, there were a couple of episode endings in season 1 and I was new to anime again. I hadn't ever watched anime week to week before. This was my first experience watching anime week to week. And yeah, there were a few later in the season where I was just like, this is why we don't watch anime week to week, was what I was thinking. Okay, of all the anime or manga your readers recommended, which ones did you like the most? And that was from @Sephyxer. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And I just have to step up and say, our readers recommend really great sounding anime and manga to us all the time. And I read every single one of them and think, oh, that sounds really good. I'd really like to watch this, or I'd really like to read this. I just don't have time at the moment. If it's not going to become AniFem content in some way, or if it's not related to my freelance writing, then I just can't justify the time right now. Again, I hope that'll change in months, years to come. But I'd love to know what you guys have picked up on.
I don't think anyone's ever directly recommended me anything, at least among our community.
They may have in comments.
At least not on my pieces. I don't...
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, wait, somebody recommended something alongside Eroica that sounded interesting, but I haven't had a chance to get to give it a shot yet. This is not a helpful answer. Somebody else carry on.
Anyone else?
Okay. I don't know if I've got any recommendations from readers specifically, but I did kind of have a good story about. It was related to Anime Feminist. I think it actually came of a Twitter argument. So something positive coming of a Twitter argument. It's like the only time in the universe this ever happened. So somebody I can't remember quite what the context was, but they were basically complaining about they were complaining about SJWs. So, great foundation for a discussion. And over the course of conversation, it got really weird. It was pretty heated, but offhandedly, the person just added an extra tweet at the end of a string that said that they were really pissed off that Wandering Sun was taken off Crunchyroll. And I was like, I never heard of that. So I ended up looking it up, and it was on Crunchyroll. I don't know where they got the impression it was taken off. Maybe it was off briefly or something like that. But I'm just like, hey, it's still on there. And then they're like, oh, well, it's really good. You should watch it. So I was curious. I read the premise. I was like, this sounds really good. This person was literally just complaining about SJWs, and this sounds like it's about a trans kid, and I watched it, and it was freaking amazing. And,
it was really good.
And I tweeted the guy back later, and I was like, "This was really good. Like, thanks for recommending it." And we had a short conversation about it, which was pretty positive. And yeah, I was just really surprised that it came with that kind of thing. Wandering Sun's really good. I recommend it myself. Anyone who likes a silent voice, it's very similar to that, especially if trans issues are important to you. It's got a really amazing series.
It's something where I need to visit the anime, because I have a few side-eye things about how they maybe wrapped up that last episode there that I can't write about yet. But anyway, the manga's really good.
Yeah, the ending was a bit. I felt like they just found a cutoff point. Mm-hmm. I'm a little afraid to read the manga right now because that it got really real, and it's one of those series you have to prepare yourself for.
Yeah, it's I could talk Wandering Sun spoilers, but people maybe don't
I haven't seen it yet, so
that's a podcast for another day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It absolutely is. Dee, how about you?
I tend to get, instead of, and this is more from like the Josie Next Door than from AniFem specifically, I don't tend to get a lot of recommendations. What I will get is people saying, hey, have you seen this? And if you have, what did you think about it? And a lot of the time I have, because I've seen a lot of stuff. And, or I've tried it and it wasn't for me or whatever. But sometimes titles will come up where I'm like, no, I haven't seen that, but that sounds neat. The thing is, because I do have such a big backlog, I'm really bad about picking up recommendations, even from my friends.
Same.
Because I have a lot of other stuff that I'm like sitting on. It's like, well, I know I want to get to this too, so I kind of like add it to the queue, and then sometimes I just forget about it. Vrai can attest to this, to give kind of a non-anime related example. It took 2 years and 5 people telling me to listen to the Adventure Zone podcast before I finally picked it up. And then I finally did, and they were right. It was great. I love it. But that's how long it took.
You had
to
2
finally
years
go,
of
okay,
episodes
fine.
to listen to.
I had like 3 by that point. But yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like you almost have to like just keep peppering me with it, and then I'm like, fine, just to shut you up, I'll try it out, and then I try it out and I like it. And because of that, because I did have multiple readers ask about both Princess Jellyfish and Natsume's Book of Friends, I was like, okay, fine, I guess I'll push them up my queue since so many people like them. And they were right, they were great, and I like them both a whole lot. So those would probably be the 2 recommendations that stick out as ones that I'm really happy people kind of pestered me with them until I finally did get to them.
And then you had 7 seasons of Natsume to watch.
Well, I'm watching it with a friend, and we're kind of catching up together, and it's been fun. It's a gradual process, but it's been really enjoyable.
In fairness,
so yeah, dear.
Yeah. You did do that to me with Rakugo, and then I got to say you were right. You're right. You're very right.
Brian and I pester each other with stuff until we watch it, basically. So.
Okay, next question. Okay, what's your favorite guilty pleasure anime from the past 6 months? And bonus, try to convince us to watch it by pitching it like an infomercial. Thanks, Ebonne B at Sable Steel. I'm going to plead Englishness and say I have no idea what an infomercial is supposed to sound like, so I'm going to skip that. Any of you guys want to answer first?
I haven't gone first yet. And the last 6 months, Akiba's Trip. It was, and I can't pitch it. I can't pitch it to anyone. I can sort of explain to you why I like it.
Yeah.
But I get to, and then they have to strip people to save the world, and it's like, and then everyone walks away, and I'm like, oh no. So I can't, like, it's got problems that I will never attempt to justify. But it's very bright and optimistic, and I really enjoy the characters, even though the show doesn't always treat them as well as it should.
You put up screenshots of like a Yu-Gi-Oh parody. Was that?
There are two amazing things about Akiba's Trip. The first is that the second episode they fight. The bad guy is a literal militant nerd gatekeeper. And like the whole point of the episode is like, don't keep people out of the fandom. Everyone started as a rookie. You should be nice to them so the content will survive. And I was like, yes, this show is good. And then I think it's like episode 8 or 9 or something is the best Yu-Gi-Oh parody I've ever seen. It was incredible. Like, even if you don't want to watch the whole show, just watch the Yu-Gi-Oh episode if you watched Yu-Gi-Oh as a kid. It's amazing. And that's one of the few episodes where the bad guy's a dude, and so the person they strip to save the day is a guy. So that happens sometimes.
Episode 8, you say?
It's 8 or 9. I don't remember the exact number, but somewhere in the back half.
Just flick through till you find something that looks like Yu-Gi-Oh.
That's a pretty good pitch.
But I really like it.
That's a pretty good pitch, yeah.
That was my guilty pleasure.
Vrai, what was yours?
I can't even defend the fact that I'm still watching Seven Mortal Sins. It's so bad. It's bad, and it's porn, and like my best foot forward is, hey, do you miss the times in the mid-2000s where the ecchi series featured characters who all looked like adult women instead of underage girls? This show may be for you. And there comes
its opening theme is titled "Whatever Happened to Queensblade."
Oh my, yeah, and oh my god, the ending series, the ending song has like this raspy dude trying to do like bad club banger music, and I laughed so hard. And there's
that premiere was kind of hilarious.
Yeah, like, and there comes a certain point where it's like you can only laugh so hard at the hilarious pentagrams and the light bars because it is very like non-consensual groping heavy in a way that I know would make many people rightfully uncomfortable. And I'm sure there's an element that's just like that's just me going, oh, this is an entirely female cast that might have that might have Yuri in it, and I'm very, very gay. Okay.
Yeah, so not underage girls is your pitch there.
No, no, look, adult fan service.
Also, if you like those Full Metal Alchemists Alchemy Circle coasters, you'll love this anime as well.
Oh my god.
They're all over
Like,
the
the
place.
fact that the censorship is so blatant and so lazy, it's amazing.
Peter, what was your guilty pleasure anime?
When I first read the question, my immediate thought was Tanya, and then I thought about that for a while, and I was just like, but were there problems in Tanya? And I feel like when I heard the premise, I'm just like, this is going to be a problem. But then it wasn't. So
Is there nothing that you've watched in the last 6 months where you've been like, nah, this is something I can never write about for AniFem?
Not really. I'd have to say, like, if I was talking about guilty pleasure, it would probably be maybe Kimono Friends. Honestly, okay, I have to pitch it right. I did watch it. It is just so bizarre because it is like it's got the lowest budget I think in it. It's got to break some sort of record for low budgets in anime. Entirely 3D CG. It's like a kids show basically, but there's I don't know, something about it is just really appealing the way they act. And then there's this undercurrent of this potentially like horror, like this horrific, like post-apocalyptic dystopia that they're wandering through, while it's all these cheery girls talking about like making friends and stuff. And it's kind of set. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Well, cause it's so there's so many theories about it now that it's hard to really get into. It's kind of like this slow burn that's existing on the background this whole time, and then the voice acting is really good too, but a lot of it is just like watching 3D models clipping through their environment and stuff like that. Oh, and the soundtrack's amazing because when they fight these like really poorly rendered 3D blue orbs, it's like got this house techno playing. It's the same music like Blade slays vampires too. I can't just this series is like an assault on the senses, and they're like I shouldn't like it, but I do. And I guess that's why it's a guilty pleasure. Also, I can't do it like an infomercial because I literally failed an interview because I wasn't able to do that. So I'm not going to talk like I'm trying to sell you a set of knives or anything.
Okay. Well, my answer, I mean, I echo what you've all said. I can't defend it. My show notes literally say Twin Star Exorcist, and I can't convince anyone to watch it because it is terrible. So it has... Like, the selling point of it for me is that the relationship between the two stars of the ship, the twin stars themselves, is one that I particularly like, and I've only really seen otherwise in something like Nodame Cantabile, where the two have kind of professional ambitions that they push each other to achieve. And it's quite a specific dynamic, and it's one I haven't seen replicated in many places. And the idea is that as soon as one of them starts kind of achieving, the other one sees that and goes, I need to work harder. And then they kind of get a little bit more ahead, and the other one sees that and goes, oh no, I need to work harder. And that's just a dynamic that I really quite like. You see it in shonen all the time between male characters. You don't often see it between male and female characters, let alone those who are expected to kind of eventually be romantically involved. And romance is an element of Twin Star Exorcist, and it's handled in a very positive way from my perspective. So they have one kind of older couple, I'm like older than teenaged. They have one couple who they become engaged, and when they do, he comes out with this I want to protect your smile line, and she basically says, no, that's unacceptable because I need to protect you and your smile as well. So just that that kind of foundation is through Twin Star Exorcist, and it underpins all the relationships I can think of in it. And so that's something I really appreciated. But it's not the tightest of shows. It's like 50 episodes, 52 episodes, something like that. And they could probably have cut it down to a good 26 and it would have been exactly the same story. So I've heard the manga improves on it. And I say improves on it. The manga is the source material, but I've heard that takes a stronger approach to it. I'm not sure. I need to read it. I'd like to. But it was something that I probably looked forward to that more every week than most things that I kept up with. And I kept up with it for a full year. So
says something.
That is something. But I thought so many times, like we've talked on, AniFem about recommending favorites, and every time it came to recommendation, I would put down Twin Star Exorcists in some capacity, and then I would delete it because I couldn't possibly recommend it. So that's my guilty pleasure.
Oh, wait. Was Seraph of the End in the last 6 months? Because holy shit.
No,
No,
that was
it was a while
last
back.
year.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely a guilty pleasure. Not the last 6 months though.
Not the last 6 months.
Curses.
Vaguely related question. How often do you guys legit enjoy problematic anime? And that's from Scott A. at Green Tea Samurai.
Pretty frequently.
All the time.
All the time, forever.
I'd say 3 to 5 shows per season is are legitimately problematic, and I still watch them. Like last season, Dragon Maid had its issues. Interview with Monster Girls was just a constant tug of war between whether it's going to be about the characters or just this shitty, horrible harem situation.
Yeah.
Then before that, Hit Hell Flip Flappers was problematic in some ways too. So I'd say at least 3 to 5 season are problematic, but I legit enjoy them. So we don't not watch that stuff.
Yeah, I feel like there's very few things that I go into and I go, there are no issues with this whatsoever.
Yes, exactly.
At all. That's really rare. So, pretty much every show I watch, there's going to be some moment where, my eyebrow gives a little twitch, and I'm like, that's not great.
Even Rakugo.
Yeah.
Even Rakugo had and very, very few moments in Rakugo. But I will kind of defend those decisions, but I did not care for them. But yeah. No, overall, I think it's hard to find a show that you're like, well, there's no issues with this. It's perfect. So I think I enjoy problematic stuff, pretty much constantly. And there are certain things that will push me out of a show where I'm like, no, that's my threshold. I'm not enjoying this anymore. And then I stop watching. But yeah, I enjoy problematic stuff all the time.
Yeah, I think it comes down to a question of what is the problematic element, and then how much does that meet, or does it overweigh the elements of the show that you find valuable?
Yeah.
Because I'm a big fan of horror, so I'm all problematic stuff all the time. I'm reading Killing Stalking right now, so the heights of problematic material. But yeah, that issue of how much value am I getting out of this versus how much is it deleterious to the overall effect.
Yeah. And I think everyone has specific deal breakers as well. I'm particularly sensitive to stuff involving fan service, involving breasts. There's a certain tipping point past which you have to be a very rare anime indeed to win me over. Something like the Seven Mortal Sins character designs, drop them into any anime and instantly I don't think I can watch it. And everyone, that doesn't bother some people. It certainly doesn't bother Vrai, and I'm so grateful for it. But everyone will have different deal breaker issues, and they'll have different deal breaker tipping points. And so you end up watching stuff that's, problematic to somebody else, but, for me, it's within my personal tolerance. So.
Yeah, I almost wonder if the things that are kind of our deal breakers are also things that the genres that we were drawn to over the years, because we've all been anime fans for a while at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Were things that were especially prevalent and we kind of just got sick of them. Because Amelia, you were saying fan service is a big thing for you, and and I know you're a big fan of the shonen genre, and that is kind of a prevalent problem in shonen. Yeah. My big thing is consent, and I'm a big shoujo fan, and that is a prevalent problem in shoujo. So it kind of makes me wonder if part of it is something you really want to enjoy and this thing keeps happening, and so it becomes an even bigger problem because of that element of it's taking you away from something you'd like to like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, maybe. Listeners, chip in and let us know if you agree with that. That would be a very interesting discussion. Yeah,
that's true. I think damseling with me just makes me want to vomit these days. Every time a female character I like is just this, they have to rescue her in one arc or something. Ugh, I hate it. I'll just stop watching something because of that.
Okay, and that leads us very nicely on to the next question, which is what anime have you really wanted to like but been unable to, and why? And that's from @SpiritSkies.
I can start. I really, really wanted to like Aka 13 because it's because it's the same author of, as House of Five Leaves, which is one of my all-time favorites, just as like a very quiet little found family character drama with also like a low-key romance, and I just adore it so much. And Akka was just a little bit too cold. Like I couldn't, I didn't feel like I was being allowed to get closer than arm's length to any of the characters, and I didn't feel like I really got why they liked each other either. So I was kind of left with this fantasy world building that I didn't really care about, and a very chill, slow-moving conspiracy plot that couldn't hook me in, because I will always take character writing over plot writing any day.
Right.
And
that makes sense.
More on the terms of just like outright plot problematic anime. I'm a fan of Attack on Titan, but I sometimes really struggle with that because I know that Isayama is overtly pro-imperialist, and knowing that and then seeing the pro-militarist themes in that anime can get very uncomfortable.
So that's like, what anime have you really wanted to like without feeling guilty but being unable to, and why?
Yeah.
It's like listening to Kanye West music.
And that is the only time those two comparisons will ever be drawn. Dee, how about you?
This is a broad answer. Like 80% of the long-running shonen blockbuster series that everybody's really into, I want to like the things that other people are liking and be a part of that conversation. And I tend to struggle with those because the arc-based format tends to kind of lose my interest. Like if I don't have a general idea of where the story is going to end, I have to really like the characters and just want to hang out with them like almost in a sitcom format.
Yeah.
And so if it doesn't have that extra level of like character hook there, I tend to kind of just lose interest, and which is a pacing issue to a point. And then a lot of the time they do this thing where they have these really good female characters and then they just sideline them. And
yeah.
Yes.
So I get into shows and I'm like, no, I don't care about this, about McBoyface who's leading the story. He's not that interesting to me. What about these people over here? These people seem great.
Yeah. And
I think that those two things kind of combine a lot of the time to the point where it's like, well, I tried, but not so much. And then again, like that's 85% of them. Cause then I really liked Hunter x Hunter. I really like My Hero Academia right now. There are absolutely exceptions to that rule.
Yeah, of course.
But a lot of those series, I wish I could be a part of like the big fan base for them, and I just can't get into them.
My answer is kind of the opposite. It's the surreal stuff. So I mentioned earlier that I really struggled with Utena. Flip Flappers was heartbreaking for me because so many people that I like and respect value it, and so many people told me, you have to watch this, you'll really like this, it's really feminist relevant, it's got amazing themes, amazing character arcs, you have to watch it. And I watched it all the way through and it just left me cold. The last few episodes they slipped into a more linear narrative. I think in the last few episodes they slipped into a mode that was a bit easier for me to grasp and really engage with. But before that, it was honestly like good 8, 9, 10 episodes of just kind of convincing myself to watch the next one because maybe then I'd really get it. But I know that was a big favourite for a lot of people, so I felt really bad that I couldn't get into that one.
No, yeah, I feel like, yeah, I feel that way about Eureka 7. So many people have wrecked that to me. Oh, it gets good at 30 episodes in, and I just can't engage. Can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the issue we have with ReZero. Whenever I recommend that, I say, okay, it's really amazing from episodes 12 to 18, and those first 11 episodes get really good the second time through when you watch it. So it's a hard sell. We got Caitlin to watch it through once. Yeah. I think she might do a rewatch, but not particularly willingly. So yeah, it's a very difficult sell, that one. Peter, what was your anime you wanted to like but been unable to, and why?
Okay, here we go.
Come on, do it.
We're gonna fight in the street.
It's very nice.
It's your nice.
Yeah, out the gate, I really enjoyed it, and obviously it was such a huge thing that like we were doing a watch along in Crunchyroll office. Everybody would get into the lobby. We have this huge like 4K TV. Like every Wednesday at noon, they would all get lunch and watch it together, and I was doing that for a while. But as the series progressed, I just kind of fell out of love with it. There were aspects that I really liked about the series, but I just, like, some of the narrative decisions really, really, really bothered me. specifically like Yuri's internal monologue undermining all the actual actions he was taking that would have deepened his relationship with Victor. And again, I don't read too much BL, so I'm not too familiar with their tropes and stuff like that, and I doubt I'm like the target audience. But it seemed like, just looking at it from a writing perspective, that and I'm not like a denialist or anything, but like the ending, especially, like really like pissed me off a little bit, where it felt like she would always like approach the gap and then Yuri would jump back, and the way she was doing it, I couldn't possibly like just say, oh, they're kind of teasing or something like that. And at the end, I like didn't care anymore at all. And now a second season's coming, and I'm kind of dreading it, actually, because I know it's going to be a big deal again, and I doubt I'll connect with it the way I did the first time.
Honestly, all the way through, I mentioned earlier, it was my favourite show that's aired since we started. I absolutely loved it, completely engaged, completely immersed in fandom. The last 2 episodes left me cold, and I haven't watched it since. So I do understand where you're coming from with that.
The last 2 episodes very much feel like, oh shit, this is really popular. We should probably like keep it open-ended and have a season 2.
Exactly.
Like, that's kind of the way. And I mean, again, I'm not gonna assume that that's the case. I'm sure somebody who follows like the interviews and stuff could tell me that was not the case at all. But that's the way it felt, as far as narratively goes.
It did feel like stepping back, didn't it? Because they had upped the ante every week consistently from week 1. And then suddenly they drew back. And I thought, okay, it was episode 11. And I was thinking, all right, that basically resets the entire stage so that they can come back with a really big climax. And then it was just quite underwhelming for me.
Then Victor tells him to take initiative and kiss him, basically. And Yuri says, oh, will you be my coach again?
Yeah. There are all sorts of completely worthwhile narrative reasons to do that, but the end result was that it left me a bit cold, so yeah, I sympathize. I don't agree, but I do sympathize.
Yeah, and I hear a bunch of criticism of the series and like all the denialist shit, which just drives me insane. It's like, and there's so much like pushback on the series that I feel like almost bad about criticizing it, but there's some elements that I think I just like, personally, I'm like, why did you do that?
I mean, just to be clear, when you say denialist, we're talking specifically about how people who are like, no, there's absolutely no queer content whatsoever, and not people who, because there is an ambiguous reading, and if you want to read it as not a sexual relationship, for example, you can do that. It does allow that, and I think that's kind of the frustration with the last couple of episodes, is it doesn't close that down. It doesn't kind of pick a path and commit to it. There are people who give quite reasonable criticisms of they are definitely in a relationship, they are definitely romantically involved, and I don't want to completely shut that down. That's not my perspective, but I also respect where those people are coming from.
Yeah, anybody who watches that show and says it's completely heterosexual, though, is just out of their mind.
And that's
they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah,
that's the thing. There's a difference between an absence of clear homosexuality and saying it is definitely heterosexual. So, I mean, that's kind of the line I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's like, why are you even watching the show?
Vrai, do you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, it's really quiet.
Yeah.
It's well, it's I'm legitimately kind of thinking about because it's hard for me to it's been a while since I watched it, but B, I also feel so much. It's one of those shows that I feel so much about.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things that is. It's one of those shows that definitely I would need to revisit to speak about critically, I think, because I feel so many ways about it. You know, it's very special to me, both in terms of how much I'm very into the themes that Sayo Yamamoto is working with, as well as just how it related to my personal life. I found it very interesting in the way that it plays and responds to BL tropes in general, because that's something she really likes to do when she works with a genre, is respond back to it and kind of play with the tropes. I do agree that it doesn't necessarily commit in some of the ways that would have been perhaps most satisfying to somebody who's not really attuned to that kind of thing in anime. I mean, compared to a lot of shows that you would call queer baiting free, I'm looking at you and I'm not sorry. It's very I could accept a reading of it that is she's playing this game of how much can you show while not calling the thing by its name and still have people deny it, which is interesting from a creative standpoint, but from a viewership standpoint can be frustrating because there will always be people, even after Kubo came out and said, why, yes, they did smooch on the ice that one time, there will still be people who try to erase that reality. So you kind of, to a certain extent, how much do you need to be overt in those areas versus having the, in an ideal world, all things being equal, you could play something very interesting with just, how does content shown relate to content spoken, which I think was a similar problem with Yuri Kuma Arashi, that kind of wanted to play with the idea of these are overtly sexual relationships that are calling each other friends, but then didn't ever really go anywhere with that. So I think it's a fraught and interesting issue, and yeah, it's there were some I felt like Yuri on Ice trying to do a few too many things with the 13 episodes. It probably had too many characters, but
it only had 12 episodes. I wish it had 13. We could have had a banquet episode. That would have been amazing.
I guess I mean, in fairness, like in my head, I'm always comparing it to, this is a much more narratively satisfying thing than number 6, which only got 11 episodes and desperately needed 12.
True.
God, that poor show that I still love so much. But no, yeah, I do not have time for people who say that the relationship is not heterosexual but also not romantic. Like, I could see that you could argue maybe they are not involved yet, but the fact that the narrative is so clearly built to go that way, I don't have time for that kind of thing for a show that was such an event that connected so many people, whether or not they're normally fans of anime or not. It feels very important to me to preserve that element of it.
I really wish
nobody
that they'd...
can deny that. It destroyed Blu-ray sales. It it was huge. It was so many people watched it. Won everything in the Anime Awards. I don't think anybody can say that it wasn't a hit for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And like I mentioned earlier, it was one that I was able to share with an anime muggle, like somebody who just isn't familiar at all. So that was really meaningful for me. Okay, let's move on from Your Own Ice because we could fill a podcast with that.
Yep.
Maybe someday we will.
Maybe we will. What series has come closest to flawless? And in the same breath, what have you seen that is the most irredeemable? And that's by William Dunn at The Duntist. I love his username.
Yeah, that's
okay, first off, series come closest to flawless. Does anyone have an answer that is not Shouwagen no Kurakugo Shinju?
Revolutionary Girl Utena!
Last 6 months.
Oh,
did
it say last 6 months? Because I'm pretty...
This podcast is to celebrate our first 6 months as AniFem.
Oh.
So yeah. I can't talk about Gankutsuo then.
Yeah.
You can in another podcast. For this one, we're talking last 6 months.
I just thought they meant in general.
I'm sure they did, but I'm refining it.
Then it's Rakugo.
It is Rakugo, isn't it?
Last 6 months, I can't think of a series that was cleaner than Rakugo.
Yep. And we've already discussed why. That's great. Irredeemable from the last 6 months.
Fuck off, Love Tyrant. Fuck off.
I'm gonna go beyond that. I'm gonna say Super Lovers.
Yep.
Oh God, yes.
Oh, did that air? Did that air in the fall?
Season 2 was in
Season 2.
winter,
Season 2 just finished.
Yeah.
I watched the first episode of that because I watch all the premieres, and then I noped out, so I completely forgot there was a season 2 airing last time around.
I have a very long draft somewhere of a post breaking down why Super Lovers is just the worst possible version of anime that has ever existed. Obviously, I haven't published it yet, but...
Anime already has a problem with sexualizing underage characters, and I don't want to hear about consent laws. Stop it. Stop the comment you're typing right now. Stop it.
Yep.
We do not need an anime, particularly a queer anime, that's romanticizing grooming when there is already too much conflation.
Exactly the problem. He's underage. They're technically brothers. They're legally brothers. We see the grooming. It's really appalling. We see his consent overridden time and time again. It is horrible, and it got a second season, and that second season was made available where other shows have not been made available. So I just think Super Lovers represents the absolute worst of anime and of its distribution in the West. Anyone could top that? Anyone?
I can't top it, though. I do want to shout out to Izetta. That was another one that made me like viscerally angry, where she was supposed to be
Izetta.
The Last Witch. I think that was the last.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, just she was supposed to be a character that everybody admired, but like she was just constantly getting sexually assaulted by these other characters for comedic purposes, and she was like crying on screen, and it was just absolutely disgusting, and I couldn't believe that it was supposed to be comedy. It was like, I don't know, it's a lot of tropes, but it was like turned up to 11 in that series, and it undermined the premise of her character. So like narratively, it didn't work. It just felt like they were just like, this is what you guys want, isn't it? And it was like grossed out. That one was really, really, really bad. I literally saw that scene and I couldn't watch anymore. I turned it off and I never picked it up again.
And I'll give a shout out to Armed Girls Machiavellism, which is currently airing, which is the only anime in the 6 months we've aired. We've aired in the 6 months since we launched. It's the only anime that's aired that I've watched and then come back to the group and said, you guys, this is super offensive. And offensive is not a word I throw around very much. It's not a word I use lightly. Armed Girls Machiavellism, absolutely offensive. It's appalling. And I don't, because it's baked into the premise, there's absolutely no way it can possibly improve. And that was my answer for this question before I remembered the existence of Super Lovers.
Yeah, I thought you'd go with Super Lovers.
Okay. Anyone want to add to that? Or
everybody nice and angry?
I don't think I mean, again, I watch all the premieres, so I definitely have seen a lot of bad stuff, but I tend to I've seen so much of it that I kind of just wipe it from my memory.
Yeah.
And in the last 6 months, I don't think there's really been anything
Arrow manga sensei?
that is anything that has stuck with me that I'm like, that is completely irredeemable, awful, like I can't even get through, like 15 minutes of it kind of thing. There's been some bad stuff, but nothing that really jumps out at me. I had an answer for this, Amelia, but it was my entire like life of watching anime, not and reading manga, not specifically the last 6 months. So yeah, no, I think you guys have covered the big ones. I tend to just try to purge those from my brain as quickly as possible, so they don't necessarily stick with me.
Okay, final question is from Senpai Notes, at Senpai Notes on Twitter. What other shows do you most look forward to writing on, whether it's a current or upcoming show or a classic? We've been discussing classics this entire time. Which ones do you guys want to write about most?
So I've got a few. Most of them are like kind of like old shoujo or I love Chinese inspired East Asian inspired fantasy series. And I really haven't had a chance to write about them. I'm rewatching Story of Saionkoku right now, and I would love an excuse to talk about that show several times, if possible. I have not rewatched The 12 Kingdoms ever. I saw it once like 10 years ago, and I really want to get back to it.
Oh, that's happening.
So I'd love to rewatch that, and then I'm sure there will be things in there that I can talk about. And then, God help me, I want to talk about Fushigi Yugi with y'all. That might be more podcast than writing. But I think that would be a really fun experience. It's a show that's very near and dear to my heart, even though it's just riddled with problems, and I know that about it. So trying to sort of balance those two, that emotional versus that more analytical side would be interesting for sure.
Yeah, there are things that will probably end up on the site. Like there's a piece on Higurashi that I've kind of had backburnered forever and will eventually write about, honest, I swear. There are ones that will probably never make it on there, like, hey, who wants to hear about my feelings about how frustrating the portrayal of gender is in Gundam 00? The answer is nobody but me.
The answer is Lauren Orsini. What are you talking about?
Yeah, Lauren. I'm sure Lauren would be down for that.
As far as like upcoming shows, I'm really got my fingers crossed for Netsuzo Trap next for the summer season, because the premise seems to be the setup to school days, but gay, and I'm very curious to see if that is a train wreck.
So it's basically like, what specific shows are we looking forward to writing about?
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, I don't know of any classics that I want to look back on and write, but I do know 2 shows that I'm very much looking forward to that I'm pretty sure going to be in my like writing wheelhouse. The first is Ancient Magus Bride, which I'm so looking forward to. It's like I don't know if anybody. There's probably a lot of people who do. It's like Natsume's Book of Friends meets Harry Potter. It's awesome. It's so good. I have to force myself not to read it too fast because I don't want the experience to end. That's how good this freaking manga is. And it's very cerebral. It's got a lot of magic in it, and like there's a lot of like heartfelt connections that people form with others, and like the interactions between like the real world and magic, and it's just super good. And then I don't know when the release date for this is like still to be announced, but Violet Evergarden, which I think is like the only grand prize winner of the Kyoto Animation Awards for its light novel, which basically means it automatically gets fast tracked to being an anime. It seems like it's kind of out of their wheelhouse a little bit, but I mean, I don't think they've ever released a bad anime.
Which studio? Sorry.
Kyoani.
Oh, okay.
What are your definitions of bad? That's a discussion for another day.
I'm thinking back about the different things they've made so far. Actually, they did like all those TBS like Clannad, Air kind of things. Maybe I'll just ignore that half of their production and maintain my statement, or I'll scrub it from the record. All right, but Violet Evergarden looks super good. I've read a bit about the premise, and it seems really amazing. I don't know if there's like some problematic elements seeded in there that have yet to reveal themselves, but I'm pretty excited about that one as well. So those are the 2 series I'm really looking forward to not only watching, but probably writing a lot about.
I don't ever read information about upcoming shows. I try to go into premieres really cold and know as little as possible so that I'm not biased towards...
Yeah, I kind of do that too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone has bias, but if I'd read about 7 Mortal Sins before watching it, I would have gone in with a certain mentality. I think it just enables me to at least come in with a more positive mindset. So I have no idea about upcoming shows. I guess when ReZero's potential season 2 airs, it would be so good to this time have a feminist space to talk about it.
Oh yeah.
So that would be amazing.
Watch
I mean, somewhere
along.
that isn't just my DMs on Twitter with Peter. We had some really great conversation there that nobody will ever read because you can't search for stuff on Twitter. Yeah. For me, I think I'd really like to talk about race more. I am mixed race. It's not something I've had too many spaces to talk about ever. It'll be really nice to look at the more anime featuring brown people because I'm not black, and we've tried to kind of signal boost more black fans who write about anime, and that's not my experience. There's some overlap, but it's not the same. At the same time, I don't have the kind of cultural identity of somebody who is completely from another country. So, my mother is an immigrant, so her identity's been shaped by that, but I grew up in England, and I just happen to be brown. So it would be really nice to kind of look at characters who are brown. I know it sounds really simplistic, but for example, Planetess has some really great depictions of characters of colour and also some problematic elements, which would be great to talk about. Michiko and Hachin, I'm so looking forward to watching. I haven't yet. I would really like to. When I do, I'm sure I'll have plenty to say on the racial side of things.
I would love to hear about that. Cause
yeah, me too.
I would really love to talk about it once I've seen it, which I absolutely will someday. The other thing is I'd really like to talk more about shonen anime, and it's something that we've deliberately not done because we have a lot of readers and we wanted to cultivate a particular audience as well. We wanted to cultivate an audience who like shoujo and josei as well as shonen and seinen, and I think there's a risk when you start an anime site, it can kind of pigeonhole itself into appealing only to the demographics that enjoy shonen and seinen, and I don't really have much time for shoujo and josei, and obviously that would have been completely contradictory to what we're trying to achieve here. So we've deliberately not looked too much at shonen anime, but Naruto has been a huge influence on my life, probably more than any other anime, I think. My Hero Academia is doing some amazing work right now, and I really would like to look at that. So hopefully once we've spent a bit more time looking at, like, manga is a big concern of ours, so we really need to divide our time between manga and anime, but we also need to divide our time as evenly as possible between works that are specifically targeted at women and works that are more specifically targeted at men, regardless of what the consumer response is. Like, the demographic targeting is quite prominent in Japan, I think. So we need to make sure that we're kind of distributing that as evenly as possible. So when we do have more slots open up to talk about the more male targeted anime, I would love to look at some of these shonen shows. So that's all our questions answered for today. Thank you so much to all of our Twitter followers who submitted questions. We will definitely be doing this again because it has been so much fun. Even over 2 podcasts, I think it's been really great to just discuss these things. A little bit of housekeeping. You can find all of our work on www.animefeminist.com. You can find us on Twitter at AnimeFeminist. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/animefem. And we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/animefeminist. This is how we pay all of our writers. This is how we pay our editor. We did say that at $900 in income, we would commit to weekly podcasts, but our Patreon pledges do fluctuate, as they always do. And they do dip as well at the first of the month when everybody's payments come out. So we really need to be closer to kind of $920, $925 to make sure that that's locked in. We said at $900 we would do weekly podcasts. We will do that, but only when it's actually income and not just pledges. So if you can spare $1 a month, it really does add up. So please go to patreon.com/animefeminist and send us $1 a month to continue our work. It is all very much appreciated. Thank you to Dee and Peter and Vrai for joining us. We hope you'll enjoy next episode, which will be our spring 2017 mid-season check-in.